Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Liam Carter, 12, was the kind of boy who almost went unnoticed. Thin, pale, and always dressed in baggy clothes, as if he were trying to disappear into the fabric. His brown hair, often messy, partially hid his forehead, and his gray eyes constantly avoided attention. He spent his days reading, not the books other children read, but encyclopedias, classic novels, old strategy books he discreetly borrowed from the public library. His voice was soft, almost imperceptible. And when a teacher asked him a question, he answered briefly, never raising his voice. At Brookhaven High School, he glided like a shadow among the students, invisible to adults, transparent to the supervisors. But not for the bullies. Jason Miller, Mike Connors, and Tyler Harris. 3 names that made more than one student at Brookhaven shudder. They weren't just mean, they were calculating. Jason, the leader, was tall, blond, with a sly smile and cold eyes. Mike was the biggest, the kind who liked to crack his fists as he watched others walk away. Tyler was the sneakiest. He didn't hit often, but he knew how to find the right words to humiliate, to stab with sentences. They formed a triangle of terror. And their favorite target was Liam. Not a day went by without them putting him through some sort of ordeal. In the hallways, they would corner him between 2 rusty lockers, slamming their chests against his, whispering venom-laced words in his ear. You think you're smarter than us, Carter? We're going to teach you about real life. In the cafeteria, they waited for him to sit down alone at a table before coming over and knocking over his tray. Milk spilled onto his lap, apples slid to the floor, and laughter erupted around him. He cleaned up without a word, under the indifferent gaze of the adults, as if it didn't matter. They took his snack, threw wet scraps of paper at the back of his neck, scrawled insults on his backpack with permanent markers. One day, a particularly dark Thursday, they cornered him behind the maintenance room. Jason handed him a stick of chalk. Eat this, Carter. Eat, or we'll hang you upside down in the toilet. Liam had taken it. Slowly. Without crying. He had crunched the chalk until his teeth crunched against the dry powder, while they laughed like hyenas. But he never spoke. He never begged. And every time he came home, his eyes empty, his clothes wrinkled, he went up to his room, locked himself in, and wrote in his notebook. Not what he felt. But what he observed. Their habits. Their weaknesses. Their rhythms. He wrote it all down. Because Liam wasn't just a quiet child. He was lucid. And patient. He didn't answer, not out of fear, but because he knew something no one in Brookhaven knew. Something those 3 tyrants couldn't even imagine. His mother. Natalie Carter worked at the Rusty Spoon, a small diner on the side of Old State Route 74, where truckers stopped for hot coffee and a pastrami sandwich. It was an unassuming place, with tired neon lights and walls decorated with vintage car plates, where the waitress knew every customer's first name. To everyone, Natalie was a discreet woman. Efficient. Always punctual. She wore her light brown hair tied back in a simple bun, her blue apron always clean despite the hours spent running between tables. She smiled without overdoing it, listened without asking questions, and always left with a "thank you" in a soft, almost distant voice. What no one knew was that this voice had once spoken deadly orders. Natalie lived in a small house set back from the town center, at the end of a quiet, tree-lined street. A haven of peace, it seemed. The lawn was manicured, the shutters always closed. But what the neighbors didn't notice was what garage, always locked. No windows. No easy access. Protected like a fortress. This was where his real world was. Because back then, Natalie Carter wasn't called Natalie. She was Agent Nova. His code name in the clandestine unit Echo 7, an unofficial special forces group operated by the Department of Defense but detached from any public jurisdiction. Echo 7's members did not exist in the databases. Their missions were recorded only on paper, in multi-classified vaults. Nova was the best. Trained at Fort Bragg, then sent to Langley, she had received training few humans on this earth had undergone: silent incapacitation, handling of all firearms, psychological torture, disguise, infiltration into hostile territory. She could kill with a simple ballpoint pen, strangle a man with a jump rope, or incapacitate an armed guard with a cafeteria spoon. She could dissolve an identity, create a false life, convince a rebel leader that she was his own sister. She spoke 6 languages. And she hadn't dreamed for a long time. For 19 years, she had served without question. From the Colombian jungle to the underground passages of Damascus, she had fought invisible enemies, faced betrayal, death, and loneliness. She bore the scars on her arms, and much more in her heart. Then there was this mission. Eastern Europe. A clandestine operation to extract a bioterrorist chemist from an unstable area. What was supposed to be a quick capture turned into carnage. Someone had betrayed them. Men she had known for 10 years were gunned down like game. A roadside bomb exploded, throwing her against a wall. Her collarbone was shattered. Her left ear lost her hearing. For 3 days, she survived alone in the mountains, hunted like a wounded animal. When a helicopter finally came to extract her, she was a ghost. Broken. Emptied. That evening, looking at the bodies of her teammates in black bags, she understood. The country she had protected had not protected her people. She surrendered her weapon. Tore up her papers. And disappeared. She burned her passports. Cut off all communication. She created a new identity. A false story. A new name. Natalie Carter. Waitress. Single mother. She settled in a remote state, where no one would recognize her, where no one would ask questions. She bought a modest house. And gave birth to Liam, the only reason she continued to breathe. But, you can't erase 20 years of instincts. That evening, the silence in Natalie's house was as thick as fog. Liam was in the bathroom, brushing his teeth, as he did every night. The mirror was fogged with steam from the hot water. The dim light from the ceiling revealed his small, tired body, hunched over the sink. Natalie was walking down the hall, carrying a basket of dirty laundry, when she saw something that made her step falter. A purple bruise marked the inside of Liam's arm, just above the elbow. A blow, clean, circular. Not an accidental bump against a wall. Not a fall. She stopped silently, then took a step back, slowly. "Liam, who did this to you?" she asked, her voice perfectly calm. The child jumped. He immediately tugged at the sleeve of his pajamas, as if he could erase the truth. He avoided her gaze. "Nobody," he murmured. "I bumped into something at the gym." Natalie didn't answer right away. She stared at him. Her gaze, trained to read faces, to decipher the most fleeting micro-expressions, read in her son's eyes the whole truth he was trying to hide. Pupil dilated. Shoulder tense. Tone too fast, too prepared. He was lying. And he was scared. But she didn't rush him. She approached quietly and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Okay," she said simply. "Be careful next time." He nodded, relieved that she didn't press the issue. But she, deep down, had already moved on to the next stage. Her brain had activated as if on a mission. Her breathing slowed. Deepened. Her mind analyzed. Compared. Evaluated. Fresh injury. Slash. Area not visible. Child withdrawn. Harassment likely. Repeated target. She slept little that night. And when she closed her eyes, her dreams were full of memories she thought were buried: young recruits crying in the trenches, bodies left in the snow, faces frozen with fear. The next day, she discreetly changed her schedule at the restaurant. No one questioned it. She was known for being reliable and rarely absent. At 2:45 p.m., she was parked in her old Chevrolet Impala, half hidden behind a delivery truck, just outside Brookhaven High School. Dark sunglasses perched on her nose, she watched. She knew the blind spots, the unsupervised areas, the places where school supervision was lax. The disused basketball court behind the gym. Perfect. The children began to come out. Laughter. Backpacks. Spring warmth. And then she saw him. Liam, who was walking alone, his gaze fixed on his feet. Jason followed him, with Mike to his right and Tyler a few steps behind. She saw Jason place his hand on Liam's shoulder and violently push him into a bush. The leaves crackled. The bag fell. Mike, laughing, emptied the contents of the bag onto the floor. Books, a lunchbox, a notebook. Liam's favorite notebook. Tyler jerked his cap off, threw it to the ground, and crushed it with his foot. Natalie remained perfectly still. Both hands on the steering wheel. Her eyes fixed on the scene. She had no outward reaction. No scream. No gesture. Nothing. More inside, a millimeter-precise storm broke out. His heart rate slowed. His breathing deepened. Like before a mission. The old activation code for his survival reflexes clicked back into place. Target identified. Motive established. Protocol underway. Natalie lowered her sunglasses slightly. Her gaze passed through the dirty windows of her car. Jason. Mike. Tyler. She engraved their faces in her memory. She didn't know yet what she was going to do. But one thing was certain, Person did not harm his son without suffering the consequences. Not while she was alive. And Natalie Carter was more alive than ever. That Friday, the sky was overcast, as if he sensed that something was going to change. Natalie Carter arrives a rusty spoon an hour earlier than expected. She wore her blue apron, as usual, but her eyes betrayed an unusual concentration. She nodded to the regular customers, Bob, who always ordered his coffee black, Miss Evelyn, who ate her cherry pie in silence, and Pete, the ex-army man who was reading Stars and Stripes every morning. Then she approached Brenda, her colleague with candy pink painted nails. I'm going to need you to cover me for a good hour. Maybe more. Brenda looked up in surprise. Are you okay, Nat? Yes. I just have one thing to take care of. Not another word. But in his eyes, a cold determination. Brenda didn't press the issue. Natalie took off her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. She grabbed her jacket, put on her sunglasses, and left without looking back. Has 15H45, it was parked in a side alley behind the Brookhaven High School gym. It was a place the warders never patrolled. Isolated. Sheltered by old recycling containers and tall, unmowed grass. The perfect place to attack someone without witnesses. She turned off the Chevrolet Impala's engine. The ticking of the cooling engine punctuated its silence. Then she heard. First, sniggers. Guttural. Self-absorbed. Then insults. Look at him, he's shaking. Do you want us to help you pee, you rag? And then, a dull thud. Something was falling. A body. A bag. And then, Liam's voice, strangled. Stop, please. Natalie opened the door. Slowly. Like pulling the pin on a grenade. She walked slowly, her shoes thumping on the cracked asphalt. Her heart didn't beat faster. Her breathing remained steady. She wasn't angry. She was on a mission. She turned the corner. Jason held Liam by the collar, pinning him against the gym wall. Mike had his fist raised. Tyler held up Liam's cap like a trophy. Natalie stopped 10 meters away. Hey! The three boys froze. They turned around slowly and saw this woman, a thin figure, dark glasses, motionless as a statue. Jason narrowed his eyes. What do you want, old woman? Natalie stepped forward. 1 step. 2. She entered the circle. The floor was strewn with papers, Liam's bag ripped open. "Touch my son again," she said in a perfectly calm tone, "and I promise you will regret being born." Mike burst out laughing. "You want us to be scared? Of a waitress?" Jason grimaced, then, in a movement too quick for his age, pulled a small penknife from his pocket. Short blade. Sharp. Unnecessarily risky. Natalie didn't even look him in the eye. She moved. In half a second, she was close. Her elbow slammed into Jason's wrist, a sharp crack. The knife fell. He screamed. She spun around, grabbed his shoulder, and used her own body weight to slam him headfirst to the ground. Mike, surprised, tried to charge at her. Bad choice. She grabbed him by the collar, used her momentum against him, and threw him to the ground with a powerful spin. He rolled 2 meters, grunting in pain. Tyler, petrified, turned around and tried to run away. She only had to stretch out one leg and catch him mid-stride. He collapsed. With one fluid movement, she pinned him to the ground, pressing her forearm against his shoulder blades, until he was motionless. Silence. Total. Liam, on the floor, looked at her as if he were seeing his mother for the first time. Not the waitress. Not the cook, the fighter. Natalie straightened up, absently smoothing her jacket. She approached Jason, who was curled up, holding his broken hand against him. She leaned down, very close to his face. "I served in 3 wars. I've been sent to countries you couldn't even pronounce the name of. I buried brothers in arms. And I've looked death in the face more often than you've seen your report cards." She stared at him. "You are nothing compared to what I have seen." "Nothing." She straightened up, then gestured protectively at Liam. "And you don't touch it never again." She didn't shout. She didn't insult. She spoke the truth. A warning that was not a threat, but a sentence. She reached out to Liam. He took it, trembling, still in shock. They left the alley together, under the petrified gaze of the 3 boys who, for the first time, understood fear. And Natalie, as she closed the car door, knew that Nova wasn't dead. She had simply become mother. The next morning, Natalie put on her waitress outfit calmly, though her mind was tense as a bow. She knew what she had done would not go unnoticed. She had no regrets. But she expected consequences. Around 10:15 a.m., a call from Principal Miller's office summoned her to school. She went there without a word, her icy gaze hidden behind her sunglasses. Upon entering the office, she calmly removed her glasses and sat down without waiting to be asked. Miller, a man in his 50s with a hard gaze and a too-tight tie, closed a beige folder with his name written in black letters. "Miss Carter," he began, "what you did is unacceptable. There are rules. Procedures. You assaulted 3 students on our property. I should call the police, immediately." Natalie crossed her arms. "Then do it. I beg you." He looked at her, taken aback by her calmness. He picked up his phone, dialed a number, and hesitated. Just as he was about to press the button to make the call, his phone rang. He jumped. "Yes? Yes, she's here." "Agent who?" "Oh. Very well. I understand. Thank you." He hung up slowly, his face ashen. His arrogance had drained from his face. "It seems that you have powerful contacts." Natalie simply shrugged. "No. Just people who remember me saving their lives. A long time ago." Miller straightened up and closed the file. "The boys will be transferred to another facility. No official file will be opened. And you will not speak to anyone about this incident." "I've already said everything I need to," she replied with quiet assurance. On the way home, she rolled up the car windows. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. Not like an overwhelmed mother, not like a woman erased by ordinary life. But like what she had always remained deep down, a warrior. That evening, the house was quiet. Liam was in his room, headphones in, his homework half done. But something had changed in his eyes. A new light. A deep respect. While Natalie was preparing dinner, he walked into the kitchen. "Mom." "Yes?" He looked at the ground for a moment, then looked up at her. "What did you tell them?" She smiles softly, stirring a pan. "Nothing they didn't deserve to hear." He hesitated. "Were you a superhero before?" She turned her head towards him. His gaze wasn't proud. It was honest. "No. I was a woman trained to survive. And today, I am a mother who will not let anyone make you a victim." She dried her hands, walked over to the top cabinet, and pulled out an old metal box. Liam stared at it, intrigued. She opened it carefully. Inside, a pair of worn leather training gloves, a small, yellowed manual titled Discipline and Defense, a military training rope tied in the manner of old training camps. "Starting tomorrow, you'll train. A little each day. Not to fight. But to stay on your feet." Liam reached out and gingerly touched the gloves. "Are you going to teach me all this?" "Yes. Because you're my son, Liam. And no one, ever, will break you. Not until you learn to stand up straight. Not until you know your worth." He nodded. And in that simple movement, there was a promise. Months later, in a remote bunker somewhere beneath the scorching Nevada desert, the harsh light of a blue screen illuminated a time-worn face, Director Silas Grant. He wore a black jacket with no insignia, his hands clasped in front of him, staring at a simple digital file on the screen. Subject, Agent Nova, status updated. Located, Little Rock, Arkansas. Threat level, inactive. Status, under discreet observation. Behavioral index, maternal, no hostile signals. Extra note, trains his son in survival and fighting skills. He slowly reread the last sentence. Then he pressed pause. In the silence of the bunker, only the hum of the security systems echoed. An officer walked in. Young, clean-cut, but nervous. "Director, should we intervene?" The original order said she was to remain untraceable. "Her cover is half blown." Grant remained silent. Then he sketched an almost imperceptible smile, staring at the line, "And now she's forming another one." "She hasn't resurfaced," he replied. "She's simply been protecting what she loves. Nothing in her behavior indicates a return to her former duties. And besides, she deserves this peace." He closed the file, but not without adding a confidential handwritten note. "Do not engage. Do not approach. If contact is necessary, Omega-level clearance only." Then he added, "Continued observation recommended. The sun, dormant potential. Reassess in 10 years. The agent hesitated before asking one last question. "Do you think she could come back one day?" Grant stood up. He walked slowly to a bulletproof glass window overlooking the desert. The setting sun cast a glowing red light on the barren rocks. Agent Nova has never ceased to exist. She sleeps. She breathes. And she watches. He turned back to the screen where a frozen image showed Natalie Carter teaching Liam how to tie a tactical knot. If one day the world becomes mad enough to threaten this boy, then yes. She will return. And when that day comes, pray that you will not be facing her.